Hello everyone, hope we're doing well. Big game at the London Stadium tomorrow, and I'm delighted to be joined by Sammy from the Fulhamish Podcast. Sammy, how you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm looking forward to it, actually, and for reasons that you may not be looking forward to, but we'll get on to that later on in the show. But first, can we start with your team? How's your season going?
Season's going great, but the last few weeks not so great. Obviously, the Newcastle loss was a tough one to take, and we have a bit of an injury. I'm going to call it a crisis. I asked on Twitter last night, have we passed the threshold to call it a crisis? I think we now have. I think you've picked a good time to play us. I think that we had such a stormy start to the season. I think our first 11 is really, really strong, but the depth is poor. And we've definitely got a few issues going into Sunday's game.
Before a ball was kicked this season, so right back to the start of August, were you confident you could stay up, or was it perhaps just optimism? How were you feeling?
I guess it was optimism. When you've been relegated 3 seasons in a row, effectively, it's hard to be fully confident anymore, especially when a couple of times, especially the first time we got back up to the Championship in 2018, I was confident then. I actually remember going on TalkSport with a West Ham fan and bullishly saying we'd finish 10th. And we all know what happened. So I've always been that I've tried to check in my confidence. But yeah, I had optimism because I thought, well, this is a much better team that's ever come up before. We bossed the Championship. We may have only got 90 points, but the team was good enough to get 100. We kind of just took a foot off the gas, which was a bit annoying at the time, but still doesn't really matter at the end. And I thought we'd recruited really well. And we have a striker who I genuinely think is top 10 Premier League material. So I was like, and a good manager. I was confident. I was optimistic. And I think I went for 15th before the season for Fulham. And yeah, so far I've kind of been proven right. But I think we're now in for a tough period, which is annoying because actually October is a nice run of games. It's actually some of the harder games that we had to do in the start of the season that we played well in. We beat the likes of Brighton, we drew with Liverpool. We've had some really, really good results. But yeah, I think now we're just starting to see the consequences of having a strong first 11 and a bit of weak depth.
Has your optimism turned into confidence in regards to avoiding relegation? I mean, you've had, like you said, a pretty good start to the season, sitting in the top 10 of the Premier League at the minute. You've got a little bit of daylight between yourselves and other sort of relegation candidates such as Bournemouth and Forest. So is your confidence creeping up?
It certainly did. I think this is the point now where I'm like, we need a couple more wins before Christmas or before the World Cup anyway. And then I'll start really feeling confident. I think the problem with the Premier League this season is that I don't know, aside from Forest, who are the obvious relegation candidates, because Bournemouth have started really well. I do think eventually they'll be down there, but they seem really resilient and hard to beat. Wolves seem like they're in trouble, but again, like a team with Wolves' quality, will they stay down there? Similar story with Leicester. So I think a big reason behind the fact I'm not going to go on here and say I'm confident is because I'm not 100% sure which other teams are definitely going to stay down there. I think every other team other than Forest, and even Forest to a point, I can't see them just having a season where they languish at the bottom. So I think that's the reason why I'm not going to come on and be like, yeah, we're definitely staying up. Like, I think a lot of strange things have happened than a team get relegated from the position we're in, even though, yeah, it was a good start, and 11 points after 8 games, I'd have absolutely bitten your hand off for.
What's worked for you so far? I know you speak about having a strong start in 11, but is it the tactics of Marco Silva as well? How do Fulham play? Because I'll be honest, I'm not seeing loads of you this season. I don't know why. I just assume you haven't been on TV as much as I would have liked to. So I've only got glimpses of you. I've seen all your highlights from every single game, but I take them with a pinch of salt because you see what they want you to see. I think you need to see the whole 90 minutes to get a true vibe of a team. So what's working for you thus far?
Well, it's kind of a mixture of what was brilliant last season with a bit of added pragmatism from Silva, which I think is the way to go. Obviously, last season, we were just a swashbuckling team that just passed teams to death, basically. And we were just so quick and incisive and ruthless as well. And when we went 2, 3, 4 goals up, we didn't stop. Hence why we got 3-7-0 wins last year and beat teams by 6 and 5 and 4. It was an amazing season. And then we've gone into this season knowing, okay, you're not going to do that to really any team, but very, very rarely, if any, at all. And so Marcus Silva's actually changed it up a little bit. We're now a bit more of a direct side and a counter-attacking side. We're really strong at things like set pieces. There's a lot of training groundwork to kind of make us hard to beat, I think. Until the Newcastle game, that would have been my word for Fulham, is that we are hard to beat. We're hard to break down. We take opportunities when they come. But also, it's kind of like pretty direct football. Like, we do go long, but we're also a very capable and technically strong team as well, with a range of skills. I think a big boost for us this season has been João Palhinha. You'll see him on Sunday. He has been an unbelievable signing for us. He sits in defensive mid, just running about, just breaking up play, making big tackles, and then driving us forward as well. He's got a great range of passing in him as well. You've got then Harrison Reed, who kind of also just nips about, making a use of himself. So I think quite often Fulham have bossed the midfield because those two are really strong together. And then we've relied on Aleksandar Mitrovic. He's, I think, the best header of the ball. I mean, apart from maybe Haaland, who's just better than everyone at everything in the Premier League. You put a cross into him, it will find his head, and invariably it is a goal. So it's been quite simple tactics from that point of view. It's just been like boss the midfield, get the ball to Mitrovic, and hope he gets a goal. The fact that he's injured on Sunday changes things. I'm sure we'll come on to it. But that's been our style of play this season. And it's really worked. The most impressive game by far was our win over Brighton. They were unbeaten at the time, and they came to the Cottage, and they just suddenly we weren't as open as other teams had been against them, and they found it really hard to break us down. And then Fulham just took the chances when they came. And Brighton tried to get into the game, and we were just really resilient and able to see the game out. When we get our noses in front, it's a bad sign for the opposition because we are good at holding on.
Forget West Ham against Fulham for just 1 minute, because this weekend it's Gio versus Gonzo versus over 300 people in our Hamish Chat League over on the Spitch Fantasy Football app. And there's still plenty time for you to get your team in, because the Premier League doesn't kick off until 3 o'clock this weekend. You can download the app for free. You can sign up for free. You can join the Hamish Chat League for free. You can also join the Classic Premier League game with £250 for the top prize for free as well. And don't worry about your budget, don't worry about your squad. You pick your team for this weekend and this weekend only. You don't need to worry about the Manchester City and the Arsenal blank week coming up in fantasy football, because on Spitch you pick your team for this weekend. So you download it, you join the Hamish Chat League, you pick your 11 for this set of fixtures, and then on Tuesday onwards you start thinking about what you're going to do for next weekend as well. Join myself and Gonzo. Once you've joined it, click on communities, type in Hamish Chat, you'll see myself and Gonzo there in our Scotland and England shirts. Join the Hamish Chat League, join over 300 Hamish Chat subscribers, and see how you get on. But twist, the Spitch point scoring is a little bit different. Good luck, and we'll see you on there. You're making me worried here. 2 more questions about Fulham before we move on to West Ham. Firstly, will you stay up?
Yes.
And secondly, you mentioned a few players in form there, but you didn't mention Issa Diop. How are you finding him?
We had a terrible debut. I was there when we played Crawley and got knocked out in the cup. He was abysmal, to be frank. But since then has come into his own. I don't think that a debut against League Two Crawley, where we're all having an off day, was exactly the place to fully judge him. He played 90 minutes against Nottingham Forest at centre back, and he was really impressive. He was really good on the ball. That was the main thing that I learned. He actually had the biggest distance covered with the ball outside the top 6 by a distance in that Forest game. He really was comfortable, composed, kind of dictated play from centre back. I think that he, in the right system, could be a good player, but we haven't seen an awful lot of him. I think with Robinson's injury, I think he will play on Sunday at centre back alongside Tosin. So yeah, you guys will get a chance to see him back in the flesh. But I know he's not particularly popular with you guys over the way he left.
It varies. I think there's some fans that aren't too keen on him, and I think there's some fans, and I include myself in this second batch, which is I'm all right with him. I thought he was a good centre back on his day. Had a few bad games in him and a few clumsy moments as well, where he would just have a concentration lapse, and that would overshadow the rest of his performance. He might have a good 70 minutes, but poor 5 minutes, and you'd focus on the poor 5 minutes and you'd forget about the 70 minutes he did. So I think you'd get mixed reviews from West Ham fans with Issa Diop, but I do think for a side, I mean, with the greatest respect, just promoted, I think it's quite a good signing, actually. And if you did go down, I think you'd maybe get a year out of him in the Championship as well, because I don't think there'd be too many clubs lining up to take him. But he certainly came to us with a big reputation. You know, Toulouse captain at 21 years of age. He was in the French under-23 squad as well. So he was certainly had pedigree at that age. He's just not really kicked on. A really good debut season with us. And after that, it's sort of, he's been in and out the team and stuff. And I think he just needs a home. I think he needs somewhere that he can be first choice centre-back, get a run of games in the team, and you'll have a solid Premier League centre-back there. I don't think he'll ever be one of the best in his position, but I think he's capable in Premier League. So I think you've got a good... Does that mean Ream will be left-back then?
I think most likely, yeah.
Happy days.
Yeah, which he's been fantastic this season, Tim Ream. I'm not... And actually, he played left-back against Forest and was fine. It's just his pace, obviously, and it means that I think Ream... knows that he's not going to win a foot race, so he won't get forward too much. It just limits our ability down the left-hand side. We'll no doubt probably play Bobby Decordova-Reid, and Bobby's got this amazing ability as a winger to also be quite defensively minded. So he's quite good to be paired with a left back that isn't as capable. But yeah, we've lost Anthony Robinson since the Spurs game, and it's been a massive loss, and I never thought I'd say this because he was rubbish last season. But he, I think we knew that he's one of those players that actually some players go down to the Championship and almost struggle. Like it's they almost want to play in the Premier League where they get a bit more time on the ball and it's a lot more about pace and things. And in the Championship, sometimes just the different teams that you play and the kind of agriculturalness of some of the teams just doesn't suit certain players. And Anthony Robinson was definitely one of those. And he's been such a massive loss. And the fact that we sold our perfectly good, or we didn't sell, we loaned him out, our perfectly good left back replacement, Joe Bryan, and brought in an absolute crock who hadn't played for 2 years is something that's on the recruitment team. And I'm pretty annoyed about it.
I'm picking up that vibe. But anyway, let's park Fulham for now and pick up West Ham. What's your thoughts on West Ham? What are you thinking?
Well, you've had a bit of a weird start, haven't you? I mean, like, I've clearly there was a kind of a point where like, are West Ham going to go down? I was like, no, they're not. You're obviously not going to go down, not with that squad. I know that no team is too good to go down, but I did look at it and think a team that's finished 6th and 7th in the past 2 years is never going to suddenly be dragged into a relegation battle, I don't think. But maybe just like the transition as well. Obviously, you've now got Scamacca up front instead of Antonio, and just a bit of a difficult start, and maybe bad fixes. I watched the game that you played against Forest, and I mean, you must have been tearing hair out at how many chances you missed, the way it fell, the missed penalty. Clearly that was a game that West Ham should have won, and you just fell out on the wrong side of it. So I kind of took your start with a pinch of salt is my main thing. I also watched quite a bit of your game against Wolves. Just thought that like your attack is coming together. Wolves offer nothing up front. So I don't know how much you can read into that win. Sure, they might improve when they get a new manager, but they're like, it's basically like if you can just get a goal against Wolves, you'll win because they will never score. But your 2 goals were so impressive. I love that Jared Bowen goal. The way he took it so quick, just caught out Jose Sarr, basically just by shooting a lot sooner than Jose Sarr anticipated, was just really nice. And he's one of my favorite players that you've got. I watched Jared Bowen tear Fulham a new one for Hull. Scoring a brace at Craven Cottage on probably one of the worst. We lost 3-0 to Hull on a rainy November day. It doesn't get much worse than that. Under the Scott Parker, and it was Jared Bowen. He was the star of the show. He absolutely tore us new. And I remember thinking then, like, sign this lad. But you guys got in January before we were up to the Premier League. And yeah, I'm really happy to see him do well because you could tell then that he was a Premier League player in the making. And it's nice to see a club like West Ham give him time Whereas I think if he'd have gone to maybe a bigger club, no disrespect, I think he would have been expected to deliver quicker, whereas you guys were able to kind of bed him into your side, give him that half a season where he showed a bit of glimpse, and then obviously last season you got the full array of Jared Bowen quality.
I don't suppose Ream was left back on that rainy night in November, was he?
No, Ream generally is centre back. I mean, there's a funny thing about Tim Ream. We all went into this season thinking there's no way he's going to play this year. There's no way that we will stay up with Ream at centre back. But the man's anticipation is absolutely astounding. And I imagine he's one of those players who will still be a good footballer in his 40s, 50s, because he just reads the game. I wish that he'd have had this kind of ability to read the game 10 years younger and played for us, because my God, he could have been a world beater, because he catches out centre forwards all the time, just sees their run before they do. I know you were only joking then, but
we think similar about Craig Dawson. If only he was this good 10 years ago, and we had him 10 years ago, we'd have a top Premier League centre-back on our hands. It's funny, isn't it, how you look at footballers through a prism that once they hit 30, it's declined from here. And I blame, in a weird way, like football games on that, whether it be Football Manager or FIFA. I think it gives the younger generation this impression that when a player hits 30, they're on the decline. But actually, when it comes to centre-backs, there's plenty of examples that when they hit 30, they actually get better. It's almost like I don't have pace anymore. I need to remove pace from my game, and then the rest of their centre-back qualities increase, if you like. Like you said, reading of the game, their positioning, all that almost heightens because they can't run and they can't rely on that speed.
And in both cases, protected by very, very good defensive midfielders that mean that they don't have to do too much defending. Obviously, we've got João Palhinha, you've got Declan Rice, and Souček in there, meaning that the defenders just kind of have to concentrate on heading the ball out or reading the pass. They're not like faced one-on-one. And that was Fulham's problem last 2 times in the Premier League when we got relegated, is players like Tim Ream had no protection from midfield and then were often one-on-one against unbelievable Premier League strikers. And that was when they got exposed. I think we got exposed against Newcastle because obviously Palhinha was suspended for that one. Again, you don't even need to be that high caliber of Premier League attacker. Alan Saint-Maximin, Miguel Almiron and Callum Wilson, without that protection from midfield, particularly when we were 10 men, suddenly players like Tim Ream get exposed. So they fit a system. I'm sure if Craig Dawson tried and started at centre-back for Man United or whatever, he'd be facing similar problems. And it's often all about the team. And we've had a few examples over the years. And Craig Dawson is an example I've been saying actually a lot this season when talking about Tim Ream. Is like, look, people are rude about Craig Dawson and look at like what he means to you guys. I know he's not featuring as much now, but I think that totally that FIFA Football Manager culture of just like, oh, he's over 30, he's rubbish. That doesn't help the narrative. Is lazy, in my opinion.
Yeah. Right. Last thing on West Ham before we talk about Sunday. I like to get a neutral's perspective on this, really, because also, as you said, we finished 6 and 7. So as a Fulham fan, do you now see West Ham as a team that can, this season, next season, consistently challenge for the top 6? Or do you think it's quite a temporary patch of form? Because you look at clubs in the past, like Wolves and Leicester, who have gone up there, done well for a couple of seasons, and they've fallen away quite dramatically in some cases. So do you see West Ham staying there? Or do you think we will eventually fall off, maybe this season or next season, where we'll almost go back to sort of finishing 12th in the Premier League?
I think personally that unless you are a top big 6 team, and look, I think there's an argument that West Ham one day could be, because you've got everything in terms of fan base, stadium. Maybe you haven't quite got the financial means that some of those clubs do. There is an argument that one day West Ham could be in that conversation, but I don't think you are right now, personally. I always think there's an ebb and flow. I always think that inevitably the bottom half of the Premier League will come calling, because you'll lose too many players, or if you're successful, you'll end up in Europe, and ending up in Europe means a lot more games. I think that might be your problem this season as well, is obviously just like 2 seasons of Europe, getting to the semi-finals of Europa League. Your players have played an awful lot of games without that squad depth that other top clubs have. So personally, without a major financial injection, I think that a team like West Ham will always have a season or two where you end up in the bottom half. And I say the same for teams that are maybe more at Fulham's caliber, like Palace, Southampton. Relegation will always get you as well. I remember Fulham stayed 13 years in the Premier League, and I used to think, well, maybe we'll never go down. You always will. Palace will go down, Brighton will go down, Southampton will go down one day. It'll always catch you in the end. So I think unless you are one of those top teams, like things change. And I just personally can't see a case where now, okay, West Ham are going to be top 6 for the next 10 years. I think there will be good seasons and bad seasons, but I think you have now raised yourself to a position where I don't see you being in relegation scraps too much anymore. I think maybe you're a level above that, but as I say, impossible to predict, but personally, I don't see you being top 6 forever, with all respect.
Good man. Right, tomorrow's game. If you have to give me a percentage, how confident that you could get something, even just a draw, with Mitrovic in the team? How confident would you be as a percentage with Mitrovic as striker?
With Mitrovic, I would be reasonably confident of a result. I would say it was a 50-50 that I think we could go there and either nick a draw or definitely or nick a win. With Mitrovic, I would have said it was a pretty even game, I would have thought.
And without him?
20%. I think it's kind of nick draw kind of stuff. The only thing that's the unknown is obviously we've got Carlos Vinicius, who is being brought up as a backup striker. Thank God we signed one. And he's got something to prove and has looked sharp when he's come on and has goals at Premier League level, has goals at all-round European level. And if he starts tomorrow, it's going to be his big opportunity to impress. So that's the only thing. He's a bit of an unknown for us. He wasn't particularly great when he came on against Newcastle, but we were like 3-0 down by the time we brought him on. So that's the unknown. Like, how does Carlos Vinicius? I think the much more important player is Palhinha. Like, we missed him so much against Newcastle. He's back in, and I think that's the bigger thing. I think if it was without Mitrovic and Palhinha, I wouldn't go. I'm sure it's over. It's West Ham's game. But with Palhinha, if we were able to keep it tight, then maybe a Vinicius or a Decadova-Reid might be able to nick a goal. And as I mentioned earlier, if we do go 1-0 up, I do get quite confident with Fulham. Although actually this season we've surrendered a few leads, but still I do think we've got an ability to hold on and grind out games. It's a massive blow losing Mitro.
How do you see it going then tomorrow in general? I expect Mitrovic is out, do you think? I've heard what Marco Silva said, and while he's not giving anything away, he's very much hinting, I think, that he'll be back next weekend when you take on Bournemouth. But for this one, he won't be risked.
That's hard to know. Hard to know if it's a bit of mind games of letting you guys think that Mitro's not going to play and suddenly he does. Personally, I would actually just say, look, Bournemouth's a massive game for us, a huge winnable game. And if we won that game, I'd be pretty confident of Fulham being in the top half going into the World Cup, because that's the position that we're in, or at least in the kind of mid-table. I would personally just he's clearly got a knock. It's nothing that serious, but he just needs a bit of time to recover. I would say let him miss West Ham. It's not a write-off game by any stretch, and just see what Carlos Vinicius can do, and then make sure he's fit for Bournemouth. That would be my personal opinion. That would be best. But it's also all the other injured players as well. Anthony Robinson, as I mentioned, Kenny Tete at right back. That defense, then you've got Kevin Mbabu at right back and probably Tim Ream at left. Means that I think you guys have quite a lot of joy on the wings as well. So all that being said, I do honestly think this is probably going to be a West Ham win. I think with our first 11, I'd honestly be confident of going there, nicking it, and even nicking the game. I'd probably come on here and maybe 2-1 Fulham. But realistically, with that lineup, I would probably say a 1 or 2-0 West Ham. I think eventually the pressure will cave, because I just think we've just got too many injured players.
Thank you very much. The last thing I will say to you is we struggle against teams that sit in and defend against us. We do struggle to break teams down at times, actually. Until we played Wolves, we'd only scored 3 goals in 7 games. Even after Wolves, it's still only 5 goals in 8 games. It's nothing to write home about. But from a West Ham fan's perspective, we've now got Scamacca scoring and in the team. He's now overtaken Antonio in the pecking order. And we saw on Thursday night against Anderlecht, he had one chance and scored. That's it. You can see why PSG were after him. He got one chance, hit back the net. So while you might be difficult to break down, that concerns me a little bit because the team that we pick, we're missing Maxwell Cornet, who started last weekend. And I think there's a little bit of a worry that we'll bring in Pablo Fornals, who on his day can be creative, but his days few and far between. He's not had the best starts to the season at the minute, and that might actually help you quite a lot because you play left wing, but he's not a left winger. He sort of drops back, cuts inside. When he cuts in, he doesn't necessarily cut in and shoot like Grealish might do. He tends to cut in and play backwards. So he's like we call him a defensive winger almost at West Ham. Like he's a winger, but he's almost like an attacking left wing back to some extent, where he doesn't skin you right back or anything like that. So there's a little bit of uncertainty among West Ham fans going into this one. But the one thing that does give us confidence is A, Scamacca, and B, Paqueta came on against Anderlecht on Thursday and was just, his skills were ridiculous and stuff like that. But then you're making me worry a little bit, the fact that you've got Reed and Polina there just blocking off that space that Paqueta likes to play in. He struggled in the Premier League so far. Everton crowded him out. They congested the middle of the pitch right in front of their back four, and he couldn't get into the game at all. And it sounds like you're going to do that, and therefore he's going to struggle again. So it'll be an interesting one. I think it'll be a tight game. I don't think there'll be many goals in this one, actually, going by what you're saying and stuff, even though the statistics suggest there should be.
How much of an impact do you think the playing on Thursday in Anderlecht will have? That's my one bit of confidence. When I looked at this game as well, it's like we've obviously had 8 days to prepare for this. You guys have had 3. That's obviously feels like quite a big advantage for us.
I'm still trying to work it out, really. Last season, we would struggle. Last season, we were playing on Thursday. We would struggle in the next game, almost regardless of who it was against, especially the away ones, even though we rotate this squad massively. So on Thursday, starting tomorrow will be Zuma, Kerr, Creswell. None of them played a minute on Thursday night. And then Rice, Paqueta, Scamacca only came on for the last 25 minutes. Fornals played about 5-10 minutes. Souček didn't play at all on Thursday. So there's a lot of players that didn't feature. But I think that's only part of the problem. The other part is they're still making the journey out to Belgium. They're still away from their home. They're away from the training ground for a few days. And Moyes doesn't have much time on the training ground this season. In October, if you talk about proper training sessions, West Ham you can probably count on 2 hands how many training sessions David Moyes has got, because a lot of it will be light work after the game, day before the game, whatever. So it's probably only like 1 or 2 sessions a week Moyes will have on that training ground with the players, because we've got to get ready Sunday, Thursday. It's not easy for Moyes to bring in new tactics, new game plans or whatever, and to set up for each team individually. It's probably trickier than I think most anticipate, really. Like you said, you've had 8 days. Marco Silva's able to look at West Ham and say, right, this Scamacca's up front, let's prepare for Scamacca. We don't have that benefit. We can't prepare for Mitrovic up front because we don't have the time. We arrived back into London early hours Friday, Saturday, game day. It's not easy. So I'm on 2 minds. I don't think it is bothering us that much just yet, if I'm honest with you, because like I said, a lot of the players didn't feature on Thursday at all. But yeah, I'm nervous for this one now. You've made me nervous. It's your fault.
Oh, I'm sorry. I gave you this. I mean, at least it means that if you do win, it might be a bit more exciting than you would normally have thought a win against a promoted team. But I'm excited to go. I was there 3 years ago when we lost 3-1 at the London Stadium. That was my only trip when it's been the London Stadium. I did go to the Olympics, but I haven't. It's only been once it's been the London Stadium. I know it's a bit of a weird atmosphere, especially for the away fans. I've gone for lower tier this time, though, over upper tier, which I went upper tier last time and felt like I was miles away. So I've gone lower and hoping that I might get a slightly better view of things.
Yeah, just a few less miles away. Anyway, Sammy, thank you very much for joining me. I massively appreciate it. I really enjoyed that one. I'm not just saying that. That was one of my favourite opposition previews I've done. I know that our viewers will be thinking the same as well. If you want to hear more from Sammy, head over to the Fulhamish Podcast. They'll be covering the match before and after as well. The link to their YouTube channel is in the description, and their latest video will be on your screen in approximately 10 seconds. But Sammy, thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
And if you've enjoyed watching this at home, please do drop a like on it by clicking that thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new to Hamish Chat. We'll catch you in a bit.